Exodus 11. Now the Lord had said to Moses, I will bring one more plague on Pharaoh and on Egypt. After that he will let you go from here, and when he does, he will drive you out completely. Tell the people that men and women alike are to ask their neighbors for articles of silver and gold. The Lord made the Egyptians favorably disposed toward the people, and Moses himself was highly regarded in Egypt by Pharaoh's officials and by the people. So Moses said, This is what the Lord says, About midnight I will go throughout Egypt. Every firstborn son in Egypt will die, from the firstborn son of Pharaoh, who sits on the throne, to the firstborn son of the female slave who is at her handmill, and all the firstborn of the cattle as well. There will be loud wailing throughout Egypt, worse than there has ever been or ever will be again. But among the Israelites, not a dog will bark at any person or animal. Then you will know that the Lord makes a distinction between Egypt and Israel. All these officials of yours will come to me, bowing down before me and saying, Go, you and all the people who follow you. After that I will leave. Then Moses, hot with anger, left Pharaoh. The Lord had said to Moses, Pharaoh will refuse to listen to you, so that my wonders may be multiplied in Egypt. Moses and Aaron performed all these wonders before Pharaoh, but the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart, and he would not let the Israelites go out of his country.
Okay, observation. What do we see? Where is this place? Egypt. Where in Egypt?
Pharaoh's palace.
Pharaoh's palace. Does it say so here in this passage?
I think.
Or are you just guessing? Just guessing. You can do better than guess. There's you look at the context. Israel? No, Israel will be a different place. This is Egypt, but which part of Egypt? Context means you read the passage before. Where was the passage before set? Where was the place of the earlier passage? Chapter 10, for example. Where was that? Where is chapter 10?
Verse 28. Pharaoh said to Moses, Get out of my sight.
Yeah. So to get out of Pharaoh's sight, you got to be where Pharaoh lives, right? And where does Pharaoh live? Palace. Exactly. So reading in context, you know that chapter 11 is in the palace of Pharaoh in Egypt. Pharaoh being the king of Egypt. Okay. So now we know where, and we know when. Not thinking about the date, but thinking of the sequence of events chronologically. What? Sorry?
Midnight.
Midnight. Oh no, that's later. That's when the plague will take place. Where does this? Yes.
Day of the Passover.
The day of the Passover, not yet. You're jumping ahead.
After the plague of darkness.
After the plague of darkness, again looking in context, yes, the plague of darkness was the 9th plague. Okay, so now there have been nine plagues, and this is the 10th plague coming up. So you know the timing in the sense of the sequence of events. 9 plagues have taken place. The plague of darkness was the 9th plague, now the 10th plague. And all this time Pharaoh has refused to listen to Moses. Okay, so you know the where and the when, the who. Who's the who? Moses, yeah. God, oh yeah, definitely. It's not mentioned there, but he's behind the scene, yeah. Moses, God, who else?
Aaron.
Pharaoh, definitely.
Aaron.
Aaron. Aaron is not mentioned, but you know, Moses is going everywhere, Aaron is going everywhere Moses goes, right? Because he's supposed to be the spokesman for Moses. Okay, so that's also implied. Who else?
Pharaoh's officials.
Yeah, Pharaoh's officials. Everywhere Pharaoh is, there will be the officials. It's not mentioned, but you know it's there, right? These people are standing around and looking busy. Pharaohs of the king always stand around and look busy, right? They may not be busy, but they look busy. Okay, who else is there?
Egyptians and the Israelites.
Egyptians and the Israelites, would they be in a palace, you think? If this is a palace, would they be in a palace? No, yeah. Okay, so in the wider context, outside the palace would be yes, but right now in this passage, chapter 11, it is Moses, it is Aaron, it's Pharaoh and his officials, and it's God. And probably that's it. That's the who. What is happening? What is happening? That's the what.
God said to Moses.
Okay, God is speaking to Moses. What else? God is speaking to Moses. And then what else?
And then Moses speaking to Pharaoh.
And Moses speaking to Pharaoh. Yeah. Okay. So let's look at each of them. What did God say to Pharaoh? That will be fact. What did God say to Pharaoh? Just reading the statement. What is God telling Moses?
Set the people free.
Set.
And Pharaoh to tell.
Tell Pharaoh to set the people free. If not, there's a consequence, there's a warning. So God is telling Moses to warn Pharaoh, and there's a warning. The words of the warning are given. And Moses goes and warns Pharaoh. Right? So that's the what of this passage. And God says to Pharaoh, tell the Pharaoh to let the people go. Otherwise, about midnight. In the original Hebrew, it actually says about the middle of the night. Okay, the middle of the night. We do not know if it's exactly midnight, but the middle of the night, God himself is saying, I will do it. The other 9 plagues, God sends locusts, God sends hail, God sends wind, whatever, he sends something, right? But now he says, I will do it. This is a plague where God himself will be personally involved. And in the Hebrew, it's even more emphatic. He says, I, even I. So I, God says, I will not be personally involved because for 9 times Pharaoh has rejected me. So he says to Moses to tell Pharaoh about the middle of the night, every firstborn in Egypt will die. Verse 5, every firstborn, it says that every firstborn son. But in the Hebrew, it is bekor. Bekor, B-E-K-O-R, bekor is a word that can mean both man and woman, son and daughter. So every firstborn, in fact, I think that they included daughters. Every firstborn son or daughter. Why? Because later on we are told in verse I think next chapter, chapter 12. Anyway, we'll read it next week. Chapter 12 tells us that there was not a single household in Egypt where there was no death. So if you happen to have a house full of daughters, there won't be death. But the word of God says there was a death in every family. So even if they had all daughters, they still had a death in the family. So every firstborn, man or woman, boy or girl.
So the translation firstborn son is not.
Son is added on by the NIV.
I think the word son is generic. It could be generic.
No, the word bekor doesn't say son or daughter.
Oh.
Yeah, bekor is firstborn. It's just every firstborn. Okay, so it's not even one of those man equals man and woman kind of words. So firstborn.
It says in verse 30.
Verse 30. 12:30 is it? Oh, Raymond's gone ahead to look up for the verse for me. Yeah, 12:30. Pharaoh and all his officials and all the Egyptians got up during the night, and there was loud wailing in Egypt, for there was not a house without someone dead. There was not a house with someone dead. So even if you had daughters all in the house, there was someone dead in the house, the firstborn. So here is a very dire warning, a very, very strict and serious warning that if you don't obey me, you and all your firstborn will die, including even the cattle, God says, verse 5. and then there will be loud wailing. And then he says two things which relate to, the Israelites. First thing here, he says that in the places where the Israelites lived, not even a dog will bark. And then in verses 2 to 3, we are told that God told Moses to tell his own people, the Israelites, to ask for gold and silver from their neighbors. And the neighbors willingly gave it. So this is the what. Now, let's move quickly then now to the whys. Why do you think the Jews were they were slaves, remember? So why were they so able, or put it another way, why were the Egyptians so willing to give the gold and silver to the Israelites, as we are told in verses 2 and 3? Why? The answer to this can first be seen from the passage itself. So it's an observation, but you can also give another answer outside the observation as an implication, a follow-up logically.
You can use your context rule or principle.
Okay, and the context tells us why.
Yeah, in the wider context, in the last 6 weeks, we talk about the different plagues. So much so that the Israelites are detestable to the Egyptians.
Okay, so it could be one reason that they wanted to get rid of the Israelites. Go, 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 you are causing us so much trouble, please go. And you want money, here's money, go. Right? So if somebody has been bothering you a long time, you say, please get out of my sight. Here's $10,000, go as far away as you can with $10,000. Maybe that's one reason. Okay, that would be an interpretation because it's not from here, it's a jump, right? So sometimes you have to say, is that a logical jump? Possibly. Maybe they do dislike you a lot and say, please get lost, go, here's money. The Lord made the Egyptians favorably disposed. What does that mean? Dispose means to throw away. Dispose of, or disposal of. If somebody says, I have given you everything at your disposal, okay, it means that I've given everything for you to use the way you want it. I have given you my house at your disposal. You can use my house any way you want. Disposition. A disposition is an attitude of mind. It's an inclination, the manner you behave. So Tom has a cheerful disposition. Every time you see him, he's smiling, he's cracking a joke, he's laughing. So that's a cheerful disposition. So favorably disposed, which meaning do you think? 1, 2, or 3? 1, 2, or 3? Please dispose my cups after you have drunk from them. Please use my house at your disposal. Tom has a cheerful disposition. Favorably disposed is which one? How many say 2? How many say 3? The rest sitting on the fence.
1.
Who says 1?
I say 1. No?
Okay, favorably. Favor in the Hebrew, they use the word grace. Favor and grace more or less the same. Yeah. So I favor you means I have preference for you. So God made the Egyptians favor the Israelites. God made the Egyptians happy, gracious to the Israelites. So that was the first reason. God made them happy to give away the gold. They were favorable. So when you're favorable in your disposition, it means that you were very happy in your attitude towards the Israelites. So this was the work of God. God had made the Egyptians like the Hebrews, so to speak. Yeah. favorably disposed toward the people. And perhaps there was another reason, and the wider context, as Chris has said, there have been so many plagues, and Moses has demonstrated so much power. The verse here says Moses himself was highly regarded, not because of him perhaps, but because of all the miracles he's been showing so far, and Pharaoh's officials. Chapter 9 tells us that Pharaoh's officials were impressed. Pharaoh's officials and the people of Egypt were impressed. The only joker who wasn't impressed was the king himself. So they were favorably disposed, and they said, oh, there may be some of them who say, please get lost. But some of them, most of them will be doing what the verse here says. We like you, we know you have been badly treated, take this money, go. So God made it happen. And God's grace. And to me that speaks of something else. That's an implication about God. God made it happen to the Israelites before they leave. They leave with a bunch of money. That tells us about the character of God. One jump. What do you think that? God's provision. God sends us on our way. God gives us a calling. Do this for me. He provides. One lesson. Second lesson.
God is fair. Just.
God is fair, just. Yes.
Yeah.
Why?
Because Israelites has been slaves for a long time. They contributed to the economy.
Yes.
Now they are leaving, so they should take a part of the economy with them.
Very good.
Their wages.
That is very good. For 430 years, the Egyptians have benefited from the slave labor of the Israelites for free. So now it's just compensation. Here, take the money, your salary, and go. So God is a just God. He says, you need to be paid for your 430 years of slavery. The Egyptians will pay you, and they will pay you willingly. Very good point. Any other reasons why? God is a just God. Tells us about God. God is a providing God. He provides for us before we go.
God is sovereign.
God is sovereign. Okay? How so?
Because
Jehovah Jireh, provider.
Provider, that's right. So that's the second point. But the third point, God is sovereign.
he orchestrates events that it will happen.
Yes, God is in control. He is sovereign. He is king. So He makes things happen. He makes the Egyptians favorable to the Israelites. Now, in the old King James translation, chapter 12, they use the word God and the Israelites borrowed the gold and silver from Egypt. And so people came up with this problem. How can you say you're borrowing the gold and silver, you're not coming back? You're cheating, you're lying. And sometimes we get problems as Christians because Bible translations are bad. King James is generally good, but in this one word, they use the word borrow for the Hebrew word shawal, which means ask or demand. So it doesn't mean borrow in this case. So bad translation for the one word, which causes a lot of Christians problems of how to explain. So God told the Jews to tell a lie. Can we borrow your gold and silver? No, it wasn't a borrowing. It was a compensation for 430 years of slavery. God is just. Okay, so yeah, you get the idea, right? You can read and then you can, okay, this is the implication. And it tells me something about God by logical extension. God is sovereign, God provides, and God is just. He compensates us for our labors. He doesn't allow us to be exploited and ill-treated. Okay, so the next interpretation question will be, but before you interpret, let me give you the background. Verse 7, among the Israelites not a dog will bark at any person or animal. So Egypt is going to suffer all the death of the firstborn. But Israelites will not be affected, God says. And later on in chapter 12, we know why they were not affected. They still had to do something. They had to sacrifice a Passover lamb. If not, they also got slaughtered. And we are told too in chapter 12, the Egyptians who did the same thing with the Passover lamb, they too were spared. So here it was a question of obey God and you will be spared, whether Egyptian or Israelite. And disobey, you die, whether Egyptian or Israelite. But here in verse 7, we are told, among the Israelites, not a dog will bark at any person or animal. The Hebrew originally says, not a bark will sharpen its tongue. It's an idiom, and the NIV translate that as bark, tongue, bark. But perhaps there is another meaning for the Jews. When the dog sticks out its tongue, yeah, sharpens its tongue, like that. To the Jews' cultural context, the Jews, how do they regard the dog?
They don't like dogs.
They don't like dogs. They don't love dogs because in Leviticus 11 and many other passages, dogs are prohibited animals. They cannot eat the dog, they cannot touch the dog. The dog is forbidden. And therefore they look at the dog. In those days there were scavengers. Dogs are scavengers. They eat all kinds of rubbish. They carry all kinds of disease. You get bitten by a dog, you get rabies, you die. So they look at the dog as today we will look at a rat. Disgust. And so God is saying, the Jews don't like dogs. They are disgusted with dogs. But over in that place where the Jews live, no dog will be there sticking out their tongue. Because when the dog sticks out its tongue, it will also lick you and then you get unclean. So you got to go and cleanse yourself. No trouble, in others. The idiom is to say, no, not even a dog will stick out its tongue in Egypt where the Israelites live, because there they will be so peaceful, nothing is happening to them, no death, and all is peace and quiet. Okay, so now the question is this: what does that imply? Egypt wailing, Israel silence, peace. What does it tell us about God?
Protects his people.
God protects his people. He chose Israel to be his people, and then he protects them, number one. Number two, back to Anita said earlier on about God's sovereignty. God is in control of all the circumstances. He can make it such that Egypt will be wailing and Israel will be at peace. Same country, neighbors to each other, and yet the difference. Number three, interpretation. What does it tell us about God again?
He's faithful to his people.
Let me give you a bit more background. Dogs. There could be this possibility. Egypt had a dog-faced God. The dog-faced God's name is Anubis. Anubis was god of the underworld. The ancient people believe that when you die, you go somewhere down there, they call it the underworld, and there is a god in charge of the entrance. You don't qualify, you qualify. Anubis is the dog-faced god in charge of entrance into the underworld. Perhaps God is saying, you guys, Egyptians, you are scared of that dog-faced God who controls the entrance into the underworld. I'm going to show you that not even a dog would touch Israel. No death in Israel, so no need for them to worry about the dog-faced God. Possible. Yeah? And having that little nugget of information makes our reading more interesting. So, okay, God had a message for the for the Egyptians too. Your dog-faced God is no God. He's not in control of death. I am. I'm the God of death. I'm the God of life. Not your dog-faced God. Okay? Now, one other thing about this passage, if you look deeper in the historical and the cultural context, being the dog-faced God, I think the fact that the death comes in the middle of the night says something about God. Everybody is sleeping in the middle of the night. When the death comes, it's a quiet death. You die in your sleep. Last week, the wife of one of our friends, Dorothy's actually former boss, his wife died. His wife Grace died in her sleep. And we all said, even though we're sad for Freddie, we pray that God will be with him as he is comforted. But the comfort is Grace is with God, and Grace left in her sleep, peaceful. So in a way, even though God was punishing Egypt with death of the firstborn, He didn't make them die a horrible death. Pain and all that. Yeah? It's a gracious, graceful death. It's death in your sleep. It would be nice, isn't it? If we were making a movie about that death, everybody, yeah, very dramatic, right? And you get Oscar maybe for that, right? But God didn't go for drama. Sleep or take a life away, it's over. Graciously. Now God is in control of life and death, definitely. He says in Genesis to Adam and Eve, disobey me and death will come. So death is ours in the first place. All of us, He decides only when you go. And He decides for Egypt, now you go. But He is in charge of death and life, not any dog-faced god, not Osiris and all the gods of Egypt. So God is finally doing one more thing to tell Egypt, you know, your God of death has no control over death. I am. Now, the other thing is, Anubis, the dog-faced god, is supposed to be the son of Osiris. And Osiris is the god of all death. So there's the father in charge of death and the son in charge of the underworld. So Osiris is also supposed to be, every dead pharaoh will be Osiris. The dead king will be the dead god. And the son of Osiris, Horus, another son, Horus, is the god of the living. So there is always this hierarchy. King dies, his heir takes over. The heir becomes king, his heir takes over. So Osiris will die and Horus takes over. Then he becomes Horus. The next, the king who dies becomes Osiris. The next king, the heir. So there's a cycle of life and death which they explain with their mythology. Osiris and Horus. Now both Osiris and Horus will die. And in fact, in this case, Horus dies first. The son dies first. The king himself will die later on in chapter 13. So both the king and his heir will die. Egypt will have no more heirs. Egypt also would have this disaster. If the son dies before the father when he dies has nobody to pray to for him. And that was one of the big problems for me when I became a Christian. In ancient culture, in ancient Chinese culture, and up to not too many years ago, the son, I'm the eldest son. The eldest son, when the father dies, the eldest son is the person in charge of all the funeral, and he's leading the funeral with the joss sticks, and all the ceremonies are based on the eldest son. Eldest son now is a Christian. He was mad. He was really, really mad because now nobody will pray for him when he dies. So he went out and adopted an older friend's son, older than I, to be his first son, so that he will have somebody to pray for him. And so he was very angry with me for becoming a Christian. Over many years of loving him and so on, in the last 10, 15 years of our life, we became best friends again. But, you know, at least he had taken care of his afterlife, because there was a son to pray for him. Egypt had the same philosophy, the same mythology. The king dies, the heir must pray for him. Then he will be saved in the afterlife and he will be prosperous. Now the son has died. Who's going to pray for him? So it was a disaster for Egypt in all sense, not just physical, but also psychological and religious and everything else. Your gods don't work. I am Yahweh, the God of the universe. So it was a disaster for Egypt in so many ways. Right. So how does it apply to me then? What does it mean for me in my life? It's good to know all these great things and interesting things. But what does it mean for me? What must I do?
Obey God.
I must obey God. What else?
Trust Him.
I must trust God. He's the provider. He's sovereign. Even when circumstances look terrible, I need to trust Him. He is in control. He's in charge. What else do we learn?
Trust for a long time too.
Trust may take a long time, yes. 430 years of waiting, and finally God did what He promised. He had promised, He wasn't waiting. He had already promised to Abraham it would take 430 years, right? He did say so. That was part of His plan. But sometimes His plan takes too long for us human beings to accept. Yeah, trust a long time.
But know for sure that he will bring it to pass.
Okay, know for sure because He's in control. Everything will come to pass.
Always follow him.
Always follow Him through good and bad times.
Yeah.
Through good and bad times. And God will in the end be just, right? Because God says, vengeance is mine. Do not take vengeance. Do not take revenge. Love your enemy, Jesus says. Paul tells us to Romans 12. Love your enemy. Do not return evil for good. Yeah? Evil for evil. Instead, return good for evil. So we have to return good for the evil the Egyptians do to us. Is this easy? It's not easy. It's not easy. And one of my favorite stories is of this friend of mine. She heard the gospel and she heard Jesus say, love your enemy, and when someone hits you on the right cheek, turn the other cheek. And she says, I like everything that Jesus says except for these two things. When somebody hits me, I want to hit back. And how can I love my enemy? There's no way I can love my enemy. And because of this, I will not believe in Jesus. It's just too hard. Too nonsensical. It doesn't make sense. But I think what changed her mind was one day she decided that, her enemy at that time were an old couple. For some reason, long history, there was hatred between the two families, but she decided that she would go to the old couple's house and clean up the house because they're so old, they have no strength, the house is dirty and run down and all that. She went in there, cleaned up the house, washed everything clean, and then left. And then she said, I felt so good. I knew God had given me the strength to do it. And I did it in obedience. So I know that I can do it now. I can love my enemy because God gives me the strength. Okay? So God not only provides us the financial resources, God gives us the strength to do the things we don't like to do. And when we trust Him and obey Him, things will work out all right. So today she's a faithful Christian. She knows that God can enable her to do things that she cannot do herself. Okay, comments? Questions?
It's interesting that Moses and Aaron left Pharaoh's place there. They were very angry, but they still were obedient. I often wonder if Moses had the inherent, or the power within him to go, whack, more frogs, whack, more locusts, if that was I'm just, thinking out loud here, but.
Well, later on in the Exodus story, we see another instance of Moses being
with
angry.
the water,
Yeah.
But he didn't do it this time.
Yeah. The last event, he was so angry, he hit out in anger. But here in the palace of Egypt, he was just hot with anger. He's just very angry, and he stands up.
But he still obeyed.
He still obeyed God. That's right. So sometimes we are not perfect, and God never said Moses is perfect, but sometimes we do fail. God did not condemn Moses, he just didn't get to go into the promised land. But God still loved Moses and buried him. And of course we know he's in heaven because when Jesus was on the mountain of transfiguration, Elijah and Moses were there. Okay, other comments and questions? I leave this question to you, you don't need the answer. We have learned tonight that God provides, God is in control, He's sovereign, He can be trusted. We need to trust Him. He is just and fair. And we know that God will keep His promises, right? Even though they look like it's been a long time and He's forgotten. Sometimes in our lives we go through a lot of struggle. We see a lot of things we don't understand. there is very often an answer we may not even know of. And so it is good, firstly, to come together when we learn together with other Christians, we hear what they have learned and we learn ourselves. The other thing is to constantly read the Word of God. It was because I read the Word of God constantly that I realized that there wasn't any contradiction. Now other contradictions I've found answers to eventually as I read other books, read the Bible, read other books, and listen to my teachers and my friends who are Christians. So wherever you can, wherever you go back into the world, or your own countries, there are no churches. If you can, find another Christian to fellowship with, at least another one. If not, there are a lot of internet resources today. And after you go back, you can always email me, stay in touch with all of us on Facebook or whatever is available to you, and continue fellowshipping, because there is no such thing as a solitary Christian. Everywhere in the world, we are strong only because God strengthens us, and one of the ways God strengthens us is to have people with us, and people praying for us. One of them is Bible Gateway. When I need to look for Bible verses and some articles. The other one is I think it's Bible.net. There is a software, if you are willing to pay for it, www.logos.com, and you can buy ebooks online, e-commentaries, e-dictionaries, and esort.net. This is a website where you can get some free things and some you can buy.